So some quick examples about guilt from childhood. So picture you're like a little kid back in your family, maybe like grammar school age, and you feel so bad for messing something up that your parent now has to fix. And you've caused all these problems again. Maybe you're like in the second grade and you forgot to tell them last minute about a school meeting or school project, and you've like ruined their life. Another example is like, say your mom hates her life and hates her marriage, but you can't do anything to fix it or help it the way that she needs kind of fixing and helping. Another example is your dad hates work. He hates spending money and says you're killing him with the money stuff, but school is starting and you need new clothes for school. But telling him is going to cause so many problems for you and the entire family, and you'll be causing all that upset in everybody. Maybe you just think that maybe you should go without clothes instead to avoid all that. So most childhood trauma survivors are not as connected as they need to be with just how much guilt was in our day-to-day lives as kids, how guilty we felt all the time if your family was dysfunctional at best or toxic at worst. As a child, if you ever were blamed for things out of your control that'll cause guilt, felt helpless in fixing a parent or a sibling, but you tried, it's going to cause guilt, felt that you should never make mistakes and that you should be able to handle things like an adult can, and if you can't, that's going to cause guilt. If any of that resonates with you, this video is going to be helpful to you. So guilt in childhood and in our present lives is this gnawing feeling that tells us something needs to be done, but we're trapped in an absolute no-win about the thing. A child can't fix their mother. A second grader doesn't have the ability to keep a calendar like an adult can because development. A grammar school child and many other children simply need clothes for a new school year. But guilt is going to gnaw at us and persist anyway. It doesn't care that you're a child. And it says things like, that's not good enough, like fixing mom's marriage, or that you're asking too much, like needing clothes for school, or that you're causing discomfort in others, which is always bad, which isn't true. And guilt is next door to shame. And guilt and shame kind of talk to each other. Shame is like the fuel that makes guilt unrelenting and gnawing at us. Here's how they relate. Remember what I said earlier about not doing enough? And shame says because you're selfish and lazy, or that you're asking too much because you're bad, or that you're causing discomfort in others, which is always bad, because you don't care about others. That's the shame piece. That's that narrative. Guilt is like the action up top of what we are and what we aren't doing, and shame is the reason for those things. So it's a double whammy with guilt and shame. And that's confusing between the two. As an exercise right now, maybe leave a comment in this video about something that you currently feel guilty about. And it's most likely going to be an action-oriented thing. Then in the same comment, in the same sentence, then add the shame piece that your inner child feels about the action-oriented thing. Stuff like, I feel guilty that I can't fix my good coworker's breakup because shame tells me I'm selfish for not trying. Or even better, if you can trace back to your childhood about why the shame is there. And shame clouds reality. Our childhood trauma stuff is how we feel about ourselves lights the fire, again, all those nasty core childhood trauma beliefs that heats up the guilt in the present. And if you don't know me, I'm Patrick Teahan. I'm a childhood trauma educator. I'm also a childhood trauma survivor. I also do research on childhood trauma, and I've linked 2 articles with assessments in this video description. The assessments look at, one, is how we can measure the impact of our childhood trauma in CPTSD symptoms, and the other one is a measurement of the impact of our environment as children. That's the toxic family test. You can check those out and subscribe to the channel for more resources on childhood trauma. So some present examples about guilt. A big part of guilt is how it makes us kind of cave into things at our own expense, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. And that caving is a powerful guilt-based emotion. One is, you say you can't help a friend organize a gathering because you're sick. Guilt's going to gnaw at you, and shame indirectly tells you that you're selfish or you're faking. So you give in and you head over to your friend's house and you just power through even though you feel like crap. Another example is, say you ask for a vacation at work and your coworkers now have to cover for your absence. Guilt gnaws at you and takes over, and you start to tell yourself to cancel the vacation because shame is saying you're too selfish for burden everybody around you, even though that you've covered for other people. That doesn't matter to our inner child. And guilt as a byproduct from childhood trauma makes advocating for yourself or simply being human really uncomfortable, which we'll see later in these role plays, if not unbearable when you're just starting to work on yourself. So if you're just new to this stuff, it's kind of like at its worst, it gets better. And notice how guilt is deeply rooted in not negatively impacting others. So we tend to cave in, we tend to self-sacrifice. It's important to think about where that comes from to start overcoming guilt behaviors, which is very possible, meaning where does that come from in childhood? But here's what can be done about this. In this video, I'm going to model inner child reparenting work, a discussion between our inner adult and our inner child with the goal of asking how the child feels about the guilt, relating it back to childhood trauma and validating that abuse, and then helping them stay the course and reclaim being human, not caving in and not giving into the guilt-based feelings. And you'll see what I mean. And if you don't like inner child language, just flip it to what we already do every day, which is a kind of a talk between parts of our brain. Our prefrontal cortex tells us to not flip the bird to somebody in traffic when our amygdala really wants to. Our emotional memory system, which is the amygdala or the limbic system, is like burn it all down. But then there's a part of us, our brain, that's like, oh, cool our jets for a minute, you know? So you can look at your inner adult as that prefrontal cortex that keeps the ship afloat and deals with feelings better and regulates that reactive triggered part of us, the amygdala, or your subconscious if you like, or just call it the inner child. You pick. It's okay. And I'm going to do this role play twice in two versions. When our inner adult is just starting off and isn't that strong enough to educate the inner child and push back on the behaviors, the caving in, that kind of a thing, it's hard to battle that because it's so ingrained if we've spent a lifetime in guilt and a lifetime of people pleasing or fawning or caving into things. We usually tend to overly agree with our feelings way too much, and we tend to self-sabotage. You'll see what I mean in a minute. In the second part, I'm going to play the same role play with what a stronger inner adult would look like that has more concern about the self-sabotaging and helps the inner child trust things enough to be different in the world in the present. So you'll want to stick around for the part two because there are techniques that are missing in typical reparenting work. So here's the scenario. Here we go, yo. That's a Gen X reference that I hope some of you find enjoyable. And the scenario to this role play is a childhood trauma survivor just got off a call with their mother. Narcissistic mother who wants to visit them for 2 weeks. And due to the child, the adult child's trauma, guilt, and shame, the survivor agreed to 2 weeks, which is going to be a nightmare with this mother. So they've agreed to it because they have a long history of fawning with their emotionally immature mother who is pushy around what they want. They're totally oblivious to how 2 weeks might be too long and that they create tension in the adult child's home, in their marriage, and leaves them an emotional wreck after these visits. So now this adult child feels super burdened because they caved. And their mother is super immature. She makes everything about herself, and she gets reactive in moments. And that impacts this adult child's partner as well as their 2 children. That's an additional layer to unbearable guilt. Like, I can't say no to my mother, so I have to ask my partner to help me deal with her. That's a lot to ask of somebody, especially when we have this is a toxic mother, highly immature. So it's a lot to ask. It's okay if they're like quirky, but this is an abusive mother. Even though I don't really want to deal with her myself, the adult child might say. But that's really how wounded inner child stuff presents itself. We don't know what empowerment or boundaries look like, so we try to find workarounds after our cave-in that at the end of the day just really mess up our relationship, especially our relationship to ourselves. And as a reminder, this is a role play about inner work for this adult child survivor. They are reparenting themselves out of their usual caving and their stuckness and out of their feelings of powerless. In a masterclass video on this part 2 to this video. I'll explain more about where this stuff comes from and more inner child-based dialogues, but you'll see how it goes in this one in just a second. So here goes, and for simplicity, I'm going to be playing both roles as the inner adult and the inner child. And a reminder that the inner child is operating on their old childhood trauma experiences and their beliefs.
Little Patrick, I notice we're feeling guilty and upset about saying yes to mom visiting for 2 weeks, which is a lot. Can we talk about it? I'm really worried about the visit, but I feel so guilty for everybody else. She gets so bothered when you don't do things the way that she does them. But 2 weeks isn't really too long for family, I think, but I really never know those things. Saying something would really hurt her, and it's just the worst, so it's not worth it. It really isn't. Can you tell me about what you're feeling with our partner being mad at us too about the visit? Well, I feel terrible that we have to ask them to put up with it, but I would do the same for them. And I wouldn't even complain because I know what it's like. But mom makes everything awful when she visits, so I can't blame them really. Nothing can be done about it. Good point. On one hand, I get why they're upset at us, but on the other hand, you'd think they see that we didn't have much choice at all. We're caught between having to just get through it or tell mom she can't stay that long, and we both know how that would go. I don't want her to be crying like that again when we can only stay with her for 3 days last time. She locked herself in her room, and I can't go through that again. Well, I'm here to help you with your anxiety, I guess, and I can do some extra stuff so our partner can get some space from her. We're just really going to have to be exhausted and triggered and upset and not sleep well and try to make everything work. It's going to be a nightmare. You know, this feels so unfair, and I kind of want to call her and say it's actually too long of a visit. She's going to freak out, though. No, please don't. I can't hurt her like last time. I always say things that make her really mad and really sad. Then she won't speak to us for a month, and then she'll tell everybody how bad we are. You're right. Well, I guess we'll just have to deal with feeling guilty about our partner, since the alternative of living the visit is just so much worse.
So to recap, you can really see that the inner adult is kind of trying, but both the inner adult and the inner child are too focused on the kind of power that the mother has. Her freaking out, her locking herself in a room, the constant comments when she visits. And in short, the inner adult is too much in agreement with the inner child that it's not safe to push back on mom, and due to simply not knowing how to reparent yet or to work on being more empowered. Notice that the inner adult didn't explore childhood, nor take on the uncomfortable feelings about not letting the mother stay for that long. We just don't know really how to do that until we take such risk and see what happens when we do. Here's the empowered version. Here is what this would look like.
Little Patrick, I notice we're feeling guilty and upset that we said yes to mom visiting for 2 weeks, which is a lot. That's way too much time, and we did it again. Can we talk about it? I'm really worried about the visit, but I also feel really guilty for everybody else. She gets so bothered when you don't do things the way that she does. But 2 weeks isn't really that long for family, I think, but I never know these things. But saying something would really hurt her, and that's just the worst, so it's not worth it. Got it. Well, what does it remind you of growing up with her? Well, I don't know of one time, but all the time I was making sure I didn't say or do the wrong thing to her. But I always would, and I always would say the wrong thing a lot of the time, and it really hurts her. That makes a lot of sense. We did spend a lot of time making sure we didn't hurt her. It was such a big rule that you couldn't hurt her or upset her. Can you think of a more specific example about that, maybe, like a memory of that? Yeah, well, I remember when I was 14 and I asked if I could not go to her second birthday dinner. We did one with the entire family, with all our relatives, but then she wanted to do another one the next day with just us, her smaller family. But I had a school dance that night, and she had a massive breakdown just by me asking if I could skip her second dinner. She talked about how selfish I was for years. And I missed a lot of things back then because I didn't really want to upset her somehow, which always happened anyway, since I always get things wrong with her. Whoa, I remember that. And it's a good thing we're talking about it. You know, that's not what a healthy mom does. Healthy moms don't make everything about them. Yeah, maybe, but that doesn't matter so much to me. What matters is not hurting her as much as I do. I need to be extra good to her, and that's why her staying 2 weeks will have to just be okay. But it's actually not okay. It's so stressful on us and our partner. And also, people visiting should be kind of enjoyable, right? Like you would want them to be there. That's funny, I guess, but it doesn't matter how much stress we'll go through as long as she isn't stressed. You know, what you told me about that dance is heartbreaking, and I'm mad about that for you. You had to give up so much of a regular childhood, and just to accompany her really, really off emotions. And can I tell you something really hard? I guess. It's actually abusive what mom does. She throws a tantrum like a child when she doesn't get her way, but she also doesn't see that her way is asking so much of other people, and she weaponizes all of that to make people feel guilty and ashamed. Everyone in her life, especially dad, especially us, just caters to her. She has all the power, and healthy moms don't abuse power the way that she does. I know, but we really shouldn't hurt her. It's really good to talk about it, and I get it. You don't feel safe to stand up to her. But I can. And she makes people do things they don't want to do, but we don't have to live like that anymore. She made you give up that dance all those years ago, right? Yeah. Sleepovers, soccer games, going to the movies with my friends, and she made it a rule that no one but her could use power and choice. Do you think that that's true? I don't really know. What do those things mean again? Well, we could choose to tell her that it's going to have to be a shorter visit since we now have some power to make room for ourselves. That's totally different. And it's totally safe. We're not stuck back there in childhood with her anymore. I don't like that idea. That sounds so scary. She's going to freak out. Here's the thing. Well, two things actually. The first one is it's already going to be incredibly uncomfortable to tell her 3 days instead of 14 days. And it's already a mess, so there isn't much difference in her being mad at us now or her being weird and judgy and bossy and really off when she visits us. I never thought about it like that before. But are you sure? Yes, and the second thing is, it's not good to give up all of our power and choice just because she freaks out. Freaking out is a weapon for her. And it's no longer good enough that we have to keep giving up everything in our life just to cater to her emotions. Healthy moms want to be part of our life. But our mom demands to take it over because there's only room for her and everything. Well, she does do that, but I'm still scared. Listen, I'm going to handle this for us. You're not safe yet because you haven't been with a healthy adult who can teach you those boundaries and those ideas. That's actually my job. And we've actually got nothing to lose, really, since she'll probably freak out and then do a silent treatment with us like she normally does, and we might not actually have to go through a visit from her at all. Okay, I think I trust you, but I just don't know. It's good for you to see someone putting their foot down. And I might not do it perfectly, but I don't want you or our partner or our kids to be exposed to someone who makes everything about them and screams the way that she does. It's too close to what you went through, and it's no longer okay. Also, it's not good for us to place mom's feelings above everyone else's, our partners, our children, or ourselves. It's not just about us and mom. When mom stays here for 2 weeks and we become a wreck, and our kids get nervous and see that, and our partner has to carry all that, they also see that I'm choosing our exhausting mother over them, and I don't want to do that anymore. Setting this limit is how I'm going to protect you and me and our home. Well, I like that a lot.
So to recap, the second version covers a bunch of important concepts in reparenting work. I teach a tool that I was taught called dialoguing, which is like having a conversation that you just witnessed, but instead it's on paper between our dominant hand and our non-dominant hand. It was a major helpful thing to my own healing. And there's going to be a masterclass part 2 version on the topic of guilt and reparenting work that you can find right up here and also in the video description. That masterclass is going to involve more examples of guilt, how to work on them, and what to specifically ask your inner child when guilt comes up in the moment when you feel like you're in a no-win again. But there is a win. So in that second role play, here are the major ideas. The inner child has been conditioned to think since childhood that the mother comes first always. And guilt was severely weaponized. You can tell from that video. That needs to be talked about in your reparenting and validated for the child like we saw in the second version. And notice how the child still wanted to kind of dictate the present, but the adult is the expert on the present. The inner child is an expert on the past. And boundaries are terrifying for a wounded inner child. And this example is kind of tricky because the present example involves the same perpetrator from childhood. That's tricky. The most important piece is that the adult part of us can handle it. And you have a prefrontal cortex, so you have an inner adult. Even if you feel like you can't handle it, there is a fake it till you make it, and you're not going to do it perfectly. But even to call that mother back and suggest a shorter day and have that fall apart and have you cave again, that's still a win in this stuff. Like you tried. And when you keep trying them, that's more grist for the mill in this stuff about the relationship with a toxic parent, meaning boundaries are a no-go with a mother like this, but when you try to set them, this is the most important part. I love this part. When you try to set those boundaries, the pushback from the mother makes everything 1,000% more clearer to this inner adult. That's what I mean about that stuff. Like, you don't have to keep kind of caving, and the more you try to push back, the more that you really see that it's not okay with abusive people. Doing the same old thing just makes the mother dominate narcissistically like she's always done. And it also still puts you in a place of smallness, guilt-ridden. And lastly, your inner child needs to see the inner adult trying. To have that conversation with the mother is to witness advocating for yourself. Those are some real changes within the relationship to ourselves. Like you're not exactly caving anymore. It's like it builds so much self-esteem to say, fuck this guilt, Okay, so I hope this video and role play was helpful to you. It's both about guilt, but also at its core, the biggest takeaway, the whole enchilada here is this concept. That visit was already going to be an exhausting shit show. Where when we agree to that stuff, we lessen ourselves. If we're with a partner, we're going to stress out the relationship with that partner. They might not respect us in the way that we need them to. It's already going to be such a triggering, no sleep mess to have this woman visit for 2 weeks. So there is a choice to choose the discomfort of setting the limit and rocking the boat and letting the mother kick and scream as the better alternative. Because what do we really have to lose in these moments? But again, as a caveat, all this stuff is nuanced. If you really are in a highly physically unsafe relationship, it's not always best to rock the boat. I get that. But in this case, is let the mother scream from a distance is what I'm sort of getting at. So it's going to be uncomfortable in these things no matter what around guilt. So that makes it easier to choose things like saying no, to take that vacation, to actually maybe letting the friend down because you're human and you don't feel well, letting your friend in your life be a little more burdened because you're human. And the inner child feels like there's a no-win because they haven't seen the gains yet about saying no or having space. We also have to get them to buy into those ideas that these are okay things to do. And it's no longer good enough for them to still have to give up everything. Lastly, and a big question for you, feel free to just think about it or leave it as a comment. Who is responsible for the mother's emotions around her disappointment? That's right, the mother. The child feels guilty because the programming is around never disappointing the mother. Because if you do, she's going to hold on to it and weaponize it and make you feel guilty on purpose. Probably another big takeaway from the video. So I hope that helps. Subscribe to the channel for more resources about childhood trauma. Check out the masterclass series right up here. In all my membership tiers, that masterclass is available. Please ask questions in the comments. Say what really stood out from you. I would really love to hear from you. And as always, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. And may you be joyous. And I will see you next time.